97.3 ESPN.com. Eagles and NFL insider John McMullen right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, as we got a lot of stuff to dive into. So, without further ado, let's bring in Johnny Mack. He's back with a little football at 4. What's up, pal?
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good, pal. We got a lot to dive into as, man, the Eagles always seemingly doing something, and today they put out a couple of interesting notes. Let's start with the first one that started out this morning, where the team and Jason Peters have agreed mutually that Peters will enter free agency. Doesn't sound like they said we've agreed to part ways, but he will go to free agency. Then they went through his career accomplishments, and at the end, oh yeah, we'll remain in communication as we continue to evaluate this option. So did the Eagles and Peters shut the door on a reunion, or is that still on the table?
Not quite, but they left it just slightly ajar. Most likely, Jason Peters is obviously still wants to play, still a starting level left tackle in this league, and he'll probably get a job. And I say probably because he is 38. So we've talked about a lot over the past couple of days with Tom Brady, different position, but similar mentality. You really want to start over with a 38-year-old left tackle? Most teams would say not. So you kind of put it down to teams that are really close to being a Super Bowl contender or something of that nature. Maybe they need a left tackle. Some of these offensive line deficient teams, and there are a lot of them, so you would think Jason Peters would get some kind of offer. So most likely they were saying goodbye, but they did keep it open just a slight bit to acquiesce Jeffrey Lurie, to be honest.
Right, like if nobody wants Jason Peters, we would be willing to bring him back, but we understand that he might have some value, and therefore, if he finds value elsewhere, we're free to let him go.
Yeah, and that's what they should have done. And I think the discussion going on was Howie Roseman realized, and he said it in his postseason press conference, we got to get younger. We got to move in a different direction. But he had to convince Jeffrey Lurie and Jeff Stoutland, because Jeff Stoutland as well loves Jason Peters. So once you get that done, you can move in the direction you want. I think Howie got that accomplished.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about Dillard, because it sounds like if Peters is gone, this is Dillard's spot. More on that coming up in just a second, because there's another potential domino here. But is Andre Dillard, in your opinion, ready to take that spot? I know it sounds ridiculous because he was drafted in the first round, but there are people that are wondering whether this kid can play or not.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have some growing pains. But I mean, the upside is still there. The ceiling as a player is still there. He's got tremendous natural ability as a pass protector. His footwork is way ahead of the typical curve. And you look about where he played in college, they didn't run the ball at all in Washington State, Mike Leach offense. So he's got to work on that. He's got to get stronger. You saw the bull rush from Everson Griffin and Robert Quinn. He had trouble with that. So you're going to see some growing pains, but, and I wrote about this on 973ESPN.com, it's kind of silly that people are saying the Eagles were going to give up on him, because, I mean, this is a first-round pick that they traded up for.
Mm-hmm.
And forget about the Eagles. Think about this league in general. You give first-round picks benefit of the doubt time after time after time, because GMs want them to succeed. So they weren't giving up on Andre Dillard after he played in 3.5 games.
Yeah. Well, and you had talked about, like, you know, his footwork and all that stuff, but I remember in the preseason people being like, man, this guy looks like a dominant pass blocker.
Yeah, he did. But, you know, training camp isn't live. Very few live periods, and that's only going to decrease as you move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get in those live reps and you see the veteran players, and Andre got thrown into the deep end of the pool against two really good pass rushers when Jason went down. They had some trouble. I don't know any rookie that wouldn't have trouble with Griffin and Quinn. So, I mean, from that point, he kind of persevered and held his own. Now, there are things you can criticize him for. You got to do a better job at right tackle. You can't complain. You can't say it's not natural. You got to fight. Even if it doesn't feel right to you got to do better. No question about that. Everybody points back to training camp and some of the issues he had. Maybe you got to get a little bit tougher. Maybe that's fair. But this is what a lot of offensive linemen in this league go through.
Yeah, and you mentioned the right tackle spot. I think that's where a lot of people are kind of fearful of what this guy might be. But, yes, you're right. He had to be better. But he also is not going to be playing right tackle, and there is a difference there.
No, there is a difference. From the sentiment standpoint, look at Halapoulivaati Vaitai. I mean, he feels more natural left tackle. Mm-hmm. When he's forced to play a right tackle, he puts his head down. He does the best he can. He's got far less natural physical skills than Andre Dillard. So that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
You got to try and persevere. You can't just put up your hands and say, this doesn't feel right to me. So I think that's a legitimate criticism. But you're also right, Mike, in that he's not going to play right tackle. Mm-hmm. He's going to be the left tackle. That's where he feels comfortable. That's where he's good at. So it's not going to be an issue. But I do think it's a legitimate criticism from last season.
Johnny Mac, Football at 4. Of course, you can read him at 973ESPN.com, at JF McMullen on Twitter. A lot of stories up today because there was a lot of news. There's another one out there regarding Halapoulivaati, which is that he is expected to do very well in free agency. Mike Garafolo reported he's heard estimates of anywhere from $8 to $12 million per year on a deal. He's a guy that is kind of like that. He's like the safety net on the offensive line. This guy goes down, Vaitai goes in. Maybe not great, but you're getting a professional effort. You've said many times, Vaitai might not be great, but that's how bad line play is in this league, is that someone's going to value him at a price that the Eagles are not going to be able to bring him back, so that if Dillard can't play or that there's an injury somewhere, you're no longer going to have Vaitai to kind of go to.
No, and the Eagles knew that. I mean, they can't bring him back at $8 million, never mind $12 million. He can't play a backup swing tackle, that kind of money. So they understand they're going to lose Vaitai. And to be honest, whoever does sign him is going to be disappointed ultimately. That's going to be one of those things, and we talk about it a lot coming this way. The expectations are going to be out of whack, especially if he gets $12 million. And then you talk about probably going to move on after 2 seasons because he's not going to live up to expectations. And then who knows, maybe he's back in Philadelphia's swing tackle. I could see that happen.
That's just the way it rolls around here, right? Bring a guy back, third time, second time.
And there's nothing you can do. When there's a player like Vaitai, who's obviously not going to be a starter here, and there is how he just called it an offensive line deficient league at the scouting combine. I've said that for years and years. You've said that. It's obvious. He's better than what a lot of teams have, so he's going to be a starter in this league. And once you talk about starter-type money, can't bring him back.
No, and that's the one thing, I guess, is the fact that and they, who are some other, like Pryor, I guess Mailata is still around. I mean, but that's a position you're going to have to figure out what you want to do with that swing tackle, because as much as people might mock Vaitai or not like him, he was the starting left tackle on a Super Bowl championship team, and he stepped in and played left side, right side, and he gave you professional games more so than not.
Yeah, I mean, they won a Super Bowl with him playing left tackle. I mean, Jason Peters was down for half that season.
Right. He's going to be the Kerry Williams for somebody. Someone's going to sign him and say, hey, he won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, no question. He's going to get overpaid, and that's what's going to happen. I hope he perseveres, and I hope that he does last. Whatever 4 or 5 year contract he gets, but the reality is it's probably not going to work out because he is going to get overpaid. He isn't going to be able to live up to those expectations. But as far as the Eagles are concerned, yeah, I mean, you got to go about finding a swing tackle. And this was always the goal of Jordan Mailata. While Brian Baldinger and Ross Tucker were putting him in the Hall of Fame, the Eagles knew he was a long-term project. And probably in the third year, and that's where we're going, inside the third year now, they were hoping he could develop into the swing tackle. The game day guy who could come in and serve in that Vaitai role.
Yeah.
When Peters was retired, Vaitai was gone. Now, the problem is Jordan hurt his back last year, was on IR, wasn't practicing, so that puts things back. So there's no guarantee he's going to develop into that. So the Eagles might have to go on the free agent market, but they're going to have to find a swing tackle.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, that's something that typically, Vaitai was drafted in the 5th round. You go and get a guy like that. Is Pryor on that list then?
Yeah, I think Pryor is a more natural guard from the Eagles' perspective, more of an inside player, which is a little weird because of how tall he is. Typically, you just look at him from a frame standpoint. 6'7" guy, you think tackle when you look at him.
Why isn't he Big P?
Well, he is Big P.
Right.
But you can pronounce, everybody can pronounce Pryor and Matt. They can't pronounce Halapoulivaati.
Right.
So they go with Big V.
Johnny Mac's with us. And then, so we got Peters potentially leaving, more likely than not. We have Dillard as look like. How much did you see any of these? Hey, they're going to try to package Dillard with Jeffrey to try to do something like that. I mean, did you see any of that nonsense going around, or is that legit? I don't know.
No, not at all. You have to think of it from a GM's perspective, and I tweeted this earlier. Howie Roseman isn't giving up on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Never mind Andre Dillard. You do not, in this league, give up on first-round picks that you traded up for in a calendar year. That makes you look terrible as a general manager. Look at the Chicago Bears, more high-profile position. They are still moving forward with Mitchell Trubisky, even though everybody in that organization knows what's what. Why? Because of what they did to get him?
I don't get it, man.
Because of how bad
You're considered a better person for owning up to mistakes instead of continuing to say we didn't make the mistake.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And when you start talking about 3-year time frame, unquestionably. But after less than 365 days, no. I mean, that's just not going to happen. It doesn't happen anywhere in this league. It's not going to happen here. And by the way, the second part is Dillard was okay at left tackle. He wasn't great.
Yeah.
But he was okay.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the move.
He was an abject disaster.
I don't have a problem with the move, and I never felt this. I don't know where you stood on this. We might have talked about it before, but there's been so much football going on. I don't remember specifically, but there was this notion that if they brought Peters back, it meant they didn't believe in Dillard, and I don't know that I believe that either.
No, and I've said that on the show. I've reported it on 973ESPN.com. It had nothing to do with Andre Dillard. It had more to do with Jeffrey Lurie's relationship with Jason Peters and Howie Roseman needed to convince Jeffrey Lurie that it was time. And that's what it was about. Had nothing to do with Andre Dillard.
All right, so let's go to the next one. I heard you talking with Eitan on the midday show yesterday regarding this, and this is interesting that new news has come out since your conversation, but how many chefs in the kitchen. Jeff and I talked about this last hour, but Marty Morningwig is back. Now, I laughed at Morningwig. He seems like the kind of name that would have ended up coaching an XFL team or something, yet he's back on the Eagles staff. I don't know what he's doing. He's the offensive consultant to Doug Pederson, but how many of these guys do you need?
Yeah, exactly. That's good, by the way, XFL coach. I think Marty would have been a good XFL head coach.
Yeah, he seems like he would have been perfect. I mean, Jerry Glanville's coaching in that league.
Yeah. Senior offensive consultants, couple quotes from Doug on the Eagles website about this.
Okay.
And, the interesting part was he brought up Marty's most recent experience in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, which I thought was interesting from a couple standpoints. A, they got rid of him because they didn't think he was utilizing Lamar correctly. And that turned out to be true.
I can't fault him for that, though. I mean, not a lot of guys are going to come in and utilize Jackson the right way, right?
Yeah, I mean,
is that a black mark on your career that you didn't utilize Lamar Jackson accurately?
No, I'm not saying it's a black mark, but
okay.
What I am saying is Greg Roman did. So the guy right after did a better job. Is my only point.
Yeah.
And by the way, Lamar did fine.
I guess my point
Doug,
is
the point I was getting to is Doug put out a quote on the Eagles website about how the Baltimore offense was a little more inventive in the running game, which I think has to do with the quarterback more than the scheme. But it's kind of a backhanded shot at Jeff Stoutland, which I was a little surprised at. But the bigger point here is, how many sous chefs you need in the kitchen? We got Marty Morningwig, we got Rich Scangarello, we got Press Taylor, we got Stoutland, we got Deuce Staley, we got Andrew Briner. And I wrote about this earlier in the offseason. I think a lot of this, the Eagles do it in both the front office now in the coaching staff, this layered approach that you don't know who to blame when things are going wrong.
Yes.
I think that's part of it. And from Doug's perspective, didn't want to fire Mike Rowe. And I think he's creating this to say, hey, look, you don't know who to blame, so don't fire my damn assistant coaches.
Well, we talked about that a little bit, okay, let me ask you this, Coach. We talked about this last hour, but I want to see what you think. If Doug Pederson was unable to coach a game, Deuce Staley is the assistant head coach. Would he be elevated to head coach on game day?
No.
So what is that?
It's interesting. That has happened a number of times in recent seasons in the NFL where, for whatever reason, guys were unable to coach. And the most recent way teams have handled it, this happened with the Rams, it happened with the Vikings when Mike Zimmer had his eye problem. They elevated the special teams coordinator to be the head coach on game day. And the thought process is the only other coach who deals with the entire team other than the head coach is the special teams coordinator. So that's the way other organizations have handled it. I don't know if those would give Dave Fitt that title, but it certainly wouldn't be Deuce, and it certainly, Rich Scangarello would probably be the guy calling plays. So, and then you have Jim Schwartz on top of that.
Right.
Former head coach who's got the most power on the staff besides Doug Pederson. So there would be a lot of levels before you get to Deuce Staley.
Yeah. So we just, with all these titles, like, okay, Marty's got this title, Deuce has a title, but I don't know that they really mean anything. And other than these are just more guys around Pederson for Pederson to, I don't know if it's more layers that you have to criticize, or is it more criticism of Pederson now? Because look, last year it was Groh doesn't do enough. He doesn't have enough help. Pederson doesn't have enough help. Now he might have too much help. Which one is it, you know?
Yeah, well, that's, people don't know. And it's interesting. I don't think much will change other than the titles, as you mentioned. And the titles are really not meaningful. It's the job description. So previously how the Eagles would set it up and do game planning, Press Taylor's responsible for the third down package. Justin Pia was responsible for red zone. Jeff Stoutland, obviously, the running game. Deuce Staley, the screen game and the movement plays from the quarterback position. And then that got all filtered through Mike Groh and then into the game plan of Doug Pederson. So I think it's going to be similar. The only difference is Scangarello becomes that filter. And what does Marty do as a consultant? I don't know. But there are too many sous chefs in the kitchen. I mean, there are too many. I don't think there's any question about that. And it harkens back to Jeffrey Lurie, post Chip Kelly. Every single press conference he gives, every single press conference Howie Roseman gives, collaboration. How much, at what point is there too much collaboration?
Read more about that right now at 973ESPN.com. As you tweeted out, post Chip Kelly, Jeff Lurie has been big on stressing collaboration. At what point are there too many voices? Check out the article, 973ESPN.com. This is Football at 4. He's John McMullen. Follow him at JF McMullen. And, of course, more Football at 4 on a Friday tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, man. He, like all guests, appear to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.